Those Who Do the Podcast will begin after this short message.
Since you're here, I think you'll also enjoy the podcast Drinking with Jen, with me, your host, Ginny Preem. Now, don't be fooled by the catchy name. My show delivers personal growth chats over drinks, of any kind. Drinking with Jen is inspiring and will empower you with knowledge through 3 different types of episodes. Intimate and vulnerable chats with me. Episodes with inspiring guests sharing their stories of overcoming adversity, as well as in-depth conversations with expert guests, such as psychologists, psychotherapists, and even a former FBI agent, to bring you credible resources and information on those tough topics like narcissism and trauma recovery. You can tune into weekly episodes of Drinking with Jen on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and hang out with me over on Instagram, Ginny Preem, in between episodes.
Welcome to another episode of Those Who Do the Podcast. With you as always, I'm Zach. This week we're having a redo. We're having a redo because when I was out in California, we recorded an episode of this podcast that somehow exploded because technology sucks. So this week, and that's actually, I'm kind of glad we're doing it now because we have more life stuff to talk about, because we have Tim Johnson here. Tim Johnson is a former master brewer, a distiller, worked in the beverage industry for longer than most people have careers, and he has now moved on backward to his truer love of art. Correct?
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
So we have all kinds of cool life stuff to talk about because Tim has danced in both worlds. He's danced in the world of creativity. He's danced in the world of corporate America, and he's dancing back again. And the funny thing, I hate when people say that. The funny thing is, because it's not really that funny.
With you, they're never funny, so it's funny.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I suppose disclaimer, Tim and I have known each other for 25 years. So the thing that's pretty cool about Tim and what people don't realize is there's more than one way to be creative. So Tim dealt in creativity in the beverage industry by creating new beverages, and also is an incredibly talented artist, and he won't probably admit, but also musician. And so Tim's got all kinds of different dances that the little monkey does. So, so Tim, thanks for coming on again after we screwed it up before. Tim is one of my oldest, closest friends, and we'll try not to bag on each other too much because it gets a little tiresome sometimes. I mean, we think it's amazing. I mean, we are our own 2 biggest fans, but
it's the surest sign of love, I think, between the two of them.
100%. And the fact that we're basically just negative clones of each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. We're both our statures are not exactly monolithic, and Tim's just a little paler than me and has a full head of hair. But otherwise, we are both as infuriatingly neurotic.
For sure.
So we're gonna go all the way back in the Wayback Machine, Tim, and we're gonna talk about you as a kid, and then we'll make our way up to how we met, and then what you've done with your life since then. We're gonna kind of breeze through some of that stuff because we want to get to what it is that you did, and will do in the future. But 5-year-old Timmy, where'd Tim grow up?
I was in Wilton, Iowa, small town in eastern Iowa, about halfway between the Quad Cities and Iowa City. Graduating class of 69 students, so it wasn't a large town. It was less than 3,000 people. total.
69. Nice. Did you?
I was waiting for that.
Was it at 70? And then you guys are like, we got to kill one of these kids.
Actually, it was at 70, and then one kid ended up not being able to graduate.
He did his service.
He took one for the team. I think, yeah.
Good for him. What a great guy. Nuclear family. Correct? Yep. So mom, dad, sister.
Sisters. Too.
Sisters. Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting. I always think one sister. And I don't know why I have that locked into my brain. Where do you fall? where do you fall in the gestation?
I am the youngest.
Oh.
I always like to say that my parents tried until they hit perfection, and then they decided to stop.
And they gave that one up, or what?
That's fair.
Yeah.
Fair. I'll have to tell my sisters that. I don't think they've ever even thought about using that.
So you're the baby.
Yep.
Treated traditionally as the youngest?
I don't think so. My mom is very, like, equity and fairness is very important to her. She's got 9 grandkids.
Oh.
And so she makes sure at every Christmas that every kid has the exact same number of presents.
But she gives the better one to her favorites, though, right?
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, like she may have like one really big buy for one of them, and then has to do like, 7 smaller gifts. So it matches like the 8 total gifts she got to the other. So she's been. So no, I wouldn't say that I was treated like the baby. Although I mean, there are traditional roles. My sister that's in the middle got bossed around, so she turned around and bossed me. It's those types of roles that kind of continue.
Right.
And my oldest sister always wanted to be a teacher, so like over summer break, we would play school summer. I could multiply first grade.
What was your favorite dress that they made you wear?
They never made me do that, which is nice. But I did have He-Man driving the Barbie Corvette.
I mean, if I was He-Man, I would want to drive the Barbie Corvette because that cat had to stink, man. There's no way Battle Cat didn't smell absolutely terrible. That's gross. Cats smell anyway. It's just gross. So you're the youngest. You what kind of stuff were you into as a child? Like, what were your hobbies as a child?
In a small town, Iowa, it's not like there's a whole lot of options for things to do. So I played, t-ball in your little league, and we didn't have soccer. We didn't have football until 7th grade. We didn't have basketball until 5th grade. But I was a very active kid. I always liked being outdoors. In the summer, I used to always ask my mom if I could eat my dinner outside so I could quickly get back to playing. Oh,
wow. Man, you were a little spaz even back then, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we were technically within the city limits, but like our backyard butted up to a cornfield.
Oh, nice.
The dead end butted up to what was the pasture of several different kinds, sheep, horses. Even though I was not, in a truly rural, wasn't playing.
Neighbors and kids your age close or no?
Yeah. So right next door to me, there were 2 boys. One was like a year younger than me. One was, I think, 2 or 3 years older than me. I've still kind of somewhat kept in touch with them. John was an editor at Marvel for a while.
Oh, nice.
And then he left to go back to med school. Now he's a doctor.
Wow. That's
yeah.
Wow.
And then Mark does PhD research in plasmas.
Plasma's the blood or plasma's the energy?
The energy.
Oh.
So he studied a lot of like physics and energy. So they were both polymaths, and so even though I felt like I was pretty good for a public school kid, I always felt dumb compared to them.
Watch me play my guitar, guys. Like, we're sending people to Mars and making lightsabers, you little dork.
Yeah, exactly. Well, like their parents were like, their dad was the city attorney, and their mom ended up running like biomedical research at the University of Iowa for years. So
wow,
it was not a underprivileged, undereducated family by any means.
What did your folks do?
So my dad, his original degree is ag education. Before I was born, he was actually a high school VOAG teacher.
And for people that don't live in Iowa, Wisconsin, either the Dakotas, Nebraska, or Illinois, VOAG would be vocational agriculture, correct?
Yes. Yeah. No, there's definitely a lot of that. There's definitely a lot of that Midwest vernacular that I take for granted. So he did that, and then he started working for Pioneer just before I was born, and he was the plant production manager for their microbial genetics division. Interesting story about that. I think I told you about him going into East Germany with white powder.
Yeah.
He switched into the kind of doing some ag sales for a while. His true love was agronomy, and so we'll get to college in a second. But when I was in college, he was getting his master's as technical support.
When you started to say his true love was, I was like, I hope he's not going to say another woman. Like, that would have been weird.
His true love was adult education. My mom was in education before she had kids, and she was a stay-at-home mom until I was about third grade. Then she went back and she taught preschool and kindergarten.
So, I mean, really, you had a pretty traditional upbringing. I mean, Dad obviously would have traveled quite a bit then, working for Pioneer, though, right?
Yeah, he had a lot of times where he was going out to Portland for things, traveling. It was always fun to have him come back. Something in Europe, neat stories or books that he complaints about the food in some of the country.
How much of his job was travel?
It was not as much as you would think. I would say he probably had one big trip once a quarter, but a lot of smaller trips. A lot of that stuff was, even if from Eastern Iowa to Des Moines or Johnston, sometimes that would still be, meeting things like that. Start the day.
Right, but he was mostly around though.
He was mostly around. Yeah, a lot of fond memories of playing catch, shoot gun, take me fishing.
You and your healthy family. Nobody's interested in that.
I know that it does not at all explain why I ended up the way that I did.
Yeah, really, there should really be some abuse.
Yeah, I know. When you look at me, you assume a whole lot more trauma that is actually there.
Look at you though; you're all trimmed up and looking respectable.
Yeah, that was definitely a thing that in the brewing industry I could get away with looking like a bearded, perpetually gross man who was constantly sweating, covered in green dust and things like that.
Yeah. I grew this beard before it was cool. Hipsters.
Hey, I did have a beard, but like before I even got into the brewing industry, I had a beard. I just let it get a lot longer when I could get away with it.
So we let's move little Timmy into where he's becoming Tim. He's going into high school with his 68 classmates. Get into high school. What are your interests then? Once you're starting to kind of, well, I won't say mature because I know you, but
yeah,
as you're moving into adulthood.
I was still doing sports, basketball, track, cross country. I really was into a lot of art projects. I tried to take as many art classes as I could. Weirdly, I was also into math, which surprises me because by the time with class, maybe 10 years old,
well, and I find that it kind of seems like in the smaller schools, kids come out a little bit more well-rounded because they're involved in everything because they have to be. You can't field an entire team, unless everybody's involved, or it's hard to fill a math club or something without multiple kids being involved in multiple things. So I think that's probably a better experience, really. Yeah,
I remember growing up watching a movie and they're like, "Oh, I got cut from the team," or "I made the team," and I was like, "That's not a thing in Wilton."
Right. Like, "Oh, you're breathing?
Did you make the team? Did you fill up did you sign your name on the line? You made the team." Like,
Yeah, but coach, my grade, shut up. We need bodies on the sidelines. We got to look intimidating. It's like,
yeah. I put the Tim in intimidation. That is for sure. All 5'6" of me.
Yeah. God, we really do look each other directly in the eye, don't we?
We really do.
I mean, sometimes I look around you like if there's a pizza or a cake or something, but I mean, other than that, what's your social? And I think I already know the answer to this because it's a small school. But what's your social structure like? How does that look in a small, semi-rural school?
Obviously everyone knows everyone. There's still cliques, but at the same time, the cliques all over.
Right.
Because I had neighbors that were a little bit older than me, so two other guys in my neighborhood, Chad and Tom, just lived half a block away from me. They were a little bit older, and even some of my sister's friends I became friends with. So I found out as a freshman and a sophomore, I was actually hanging out with senior class.
What's the age breakdown between you and your sisters?
Christine is 2 years older than me, and Marsha is 4 and a half.
Oh wow!
So they were so it was every 2 years. So when I was in 8th grade.
Oh, so that's kind of nice too, because you do kind of have that built-in, unless you're being a total douche, you kind of have a built-in friend group there too. Yeah. Was dating kind of incestuous, like because it was such a small school? Did it feel weird?
So it's really funny because there was one family in the town where the parents, I guess. So this girl I dated in like 8th grade, 9th grade, her mom and her mom's sister were married to her dad and her uncle. So the two brothers married the two sisters. So that tells you, that tells you everything you need to know.
I mean, my mom and her sister are currently married to brothers. So that's fun.
So
that's
it is definitely that. And my family did not come from the area, which was really rare for that town. Everyone was related to someone. I wasn't related to anyone other than my sisters. So that was a little weird for people. They had a hard time understanding.
I mean, the good news is like the teenage pregnancies were far less likely to involve a third arm if you were to get involved. I mean, it's like, oh, thank God, we're finally we don't have to just wade. We can hold our breath and go under in the gene pool here. Finally, thanks. It's like you bringing in a guy to get with the Amish.
Yeah. No, I should have. We had Amish around that area. We had the Mennonites. We had the Amana colonies. I could have done the whole circuit.
Dude, you could have paid for your college. Those people have money, man. All you need is a sheet and a hole in it. What?
It is funny though, because you mentioned the teenage pregnancy, and in my, that 69 students, I think there were at least 4 moms, including one who was a mom twice, and then a couple of guys that adds of them.
You'd think with the 69, there'd be very little pregnancy. Oh, I should really be better than this, but what do I have to lose? Really? You wouldn't think in a small town that but what else is there to do?
No. That's perfect. I spent my entire childhood knowing.
Yeah. That was my plan too, but here I am.
But yeah, it was really just I knew I was going to get out. I knew that every time people talked about the best years of your life, my childhood, I always laughed at the concept of homecoming because none of the alumni that showed up to the homecoming game ever left.
Right. I always think it's great because I also never went back, and I live here, and I never went to. I mean, my kids played football, so I ended up at a homecoming game that way. But like, it was never like, oh, homecoming's this weekend, we got to go back. Like, what is this?
Yeah,
Back to the Future.
It's funny. My oldest sister actually she's the only one out of the 3 of us who's gone to any high school reunion. And I remember the first one she went to. It was a potluck. And I just thought that was so funny because what says more we haven't left the town than we can bring a casserole?
Here comes the hot dish. Hot dish.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like nothing screams, I didn't take a plane to get here.
It's like, oh, does that salad have marshmallows in it? Welcome to Iowa.
Yeah, exactly. So that absolutely made me have no desire to go back.
Now, see, I did go to mine, and part of it was because they hired me to do stand-up at my 10-year reunion.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, those idiots. Like,
I was going to say, was that a good call?
yeah, I mean, it was kind of a bloodbath, but I got away with it because everybody's like, "Oh, you're right, yeah," and I'm like, "Yeah, you were an asshole in high school. How about that? Hey, how you doing now? Yeah. Oh, we thought you were in prison by now. I mean, like, I was like, what do I have to lose? These people, some of them were real dicks in high school, and they need to be reminded of that. And
yeah, absolutely.
And then once you remind them of it, they feel super bad, so they buy your beer all night.
No, that's the way to go.
Yeah, it
absolutely
really was. It was great. And it was confusing for everybody because me and my wife show up together. We weren't married at the time of our 10-year. We show up together, and we went to the same high school and had no idea who she was.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, my graduating class was like 360. So like it was possible to like not know people. Also, but I didn't have a lot of friends. So I mean, that's why I also didn't know people. Small group, like small friend group that most of them I'm still in touch with, but there's a lot of drifting apart there too, because as you very well know, like once you go away to college and some people don't leave, there's some kind of weird animosity. Like you're too good. Yeah,
I think it feels like what's wrong. I even remember one time saying that, telling a friend, I don't think I could ever move back to Iowa, and he got really offended. And he'd gone to college, but like there's this weird, I don't know, almost tribalism that when you've left the tribe.
Listen, man, I fucking live here, and I left, and other than my wife and all my kids and my grandson and my fucking dogs, given it to do all over again, I would not come back here. What's here? There's nothing here. On Wednesday, we tried to, it was, we weren't working because it was Juneteenth, and we were trying to find something to do as a family. What are you going to do? I mean, it was raining. So the one thing we have here is an amusement park. Brand new amusement park. Couldn't go. And it's like, well, we could go do goofy golf. No, it's raining. We could go-karts. It's raining. How far do we have to drive to find something cool? At least 2 hours. And it's like 2 hours. I don't want to drive 2 hours one way to just do a family activity. How far do you probably don't even have to get in a fucking vehicle to go do something cultural.
No, probably not. Yeah. We can walk we're walking distance, and I'm still in Minneapolis proper, but I'm still walking distance to a number of things. Minnehaha Falls is super close. That's really beautiful. There's a great little seafood restaurant over there. There's those types of things. And then, quick car ride to anywhere else, because I'm close enough to a couple major freeways. But I like the options. My daughter and I recently have gone to the Minnesota Institute of Arts. Mm-hmm. We have a plan to go to a play downtown. We've got options. Right. And a lot of times, she's taking the bus with me. She's taking an Uber with me. It's not even just a car. Right. We ride bikes. Well,
it's like I gauge everything by how far you have to drive to see a dinosaur bone. And, you've got a $40 Uber ride to a very accomplished, established museum. Yeah. We don't have that. I mean, we have one good museum here in town, and it's the Grout Sullivan Brothers Veterans Museum. It's cooler than hell, but not if you're 8. Yeah. It's pretty dry. Yeah. There's not a lot of, and it's like once you've seen it, we were going to go to the Mississippi River Museum, but that was going to cost us like $150 just to get in. Yeah. Plus gas and all. It's like, man, no wonder it's a flyover state. If you come here, you got to spend half your time driving to go see cool stuff. And when they put this amusement park in here in Waterloo, they're like, this is going to change the face of the city. It's like, only if people come here. Yeah. Which they don't. You want to go to a great amusement park? Bring your daughter down here. You won't have to stand in a single line. I'm serious, man. I'm serious. It is an amazing amusement park. Great rides, clean as hell, decent food. You will be one of maybe 50 people in there any given day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you've been to Adventureland, right? You'd stand in line all damn day long to ride the tornado. Yeah. But here they've got like suspended roller coasters. They've got the slingshot ones that shoot you out of the gate. Brand new shit. And sometimes you can just be like, can I ride again? Like, yeah, we'll send you around again. Like, That is insane. This place sucks.
I can't remember the last time. Adventureland kind of made me laugh. I'm trying to remember the last time I went to Adventureland.
Well, and like the nice thing about Adventureland is it's been there for like 60 years. So it has like established old growth trees and like, whereas this place doesn't have, like, most of its trees are fake. I keep wanting to say pine trees, palm trees, because it's like a Polynesian themed place. And
nothing screams Polynesia like Waterloo.
Like, yeah, I know, right? I know. But the family also owns like a water park that's like one of the 3 largest water parks in the United States. That's directly across the road. So that one was Polynesian themed. So they're like, let's dance with the one that brung us.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, oh, come on, man. Like, whatever. Because Adventureland's got a good theme. Like, it's just kind of like a down homey Main Street, Iowa, or Main Street, United States kind of gorsh kind of thing going on. And it works. I mean, when people aren't dying, which has happened multiple times there, which is kind of weird.
As a kid, I was there with now Minneapolis comedian Mike Brody when 2 guys jumped us and punched him.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, do you have a smart mouth on him?
No. It was a complete case of, I don't know, they misheard. I mean, because we were kids, but Mike was a really tall guy for his age, and the 2 kids thought he said something. And I mean, I was watching from afar because I ran, obviously. He actually uses that in his stand-up today, so that's pretty funny.
He fucking better. Yeah, and my buddy Tim, all I saw was the soles of his shoes.
Yeah, pretty much. No,
and that was before I was on the ground.
I'm definitely, if we get jumped, I'm tripping you and running type of guy.
Good to know. I mean, that would have been great information to have before we went on an adventure walk in Burbank.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I mean, then we found out later that's also like the safest town in California. Oh, my God. Remember all the graffiti that just wasn't there?
It wasn't there. Yeah. It was amazing. I've never seen that little graffiti I'm still, so when I got home, I was like, a lot of times we'll get on Zillow on Sundays and drink coffee and dream. Yeah.
It's like, man, let's look at some houses in Burbank. Maybe that's not a thing.
No,
it's not a thing. No. Nope. There's a reason it's so clean there. It's because they pay for it to be. Yeah. Those houses are expensive. Like, they make Oregon look affordable.
If you want half the house for 3 times the price.
Yeah. That's like, hey, this is a beautiful 800 square foot home for $2 million. It's like, does it transform into a giant robot or anything? No. And it's a fixer upper, so bring your tools.
Yeah.
Like, what the shit? So you are in high school and do all the normal stuff. Regular girlfriend in high school at all, or anything
really.
Like that?
I didn't date until later. There was part of me that was just part of it as I was, small and a little bit of a late bloomer and not necessarily.
When's that gonna happen?
Yeah. I was not nearly as conventionally attractive as I am now with my rugged good looks, but no. Also, I didn't really have a whole lot of interest in it because I don't know. I didn't see it as like, I knew none of the relationships were going to last long term. Right. Like there was no future that involved me staying with anyone that I was dating from Wilton.
Right. And you didn't want to get stuck there, obviously.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I did date a little. I think college is where that changed for me.
I mean, every high school kid is, I think trying to get their pee-pee touched a little bit.
Oh, well, yeah. So, I'm not going to pretend like that wasn't in play there, but yeah.
Like a cute farm girl comes up and is like, Tim, I would like to tongue kiss you. And you're like, I don't want to get stuck in Wilton.
Yeah, no, I don't. No. Yeah, well, no. That scenario rarely came up. Let me just say that.
I would have thought, it's like a guy with the rugged good looks of a Lego character would have just pulled it left and right.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you graduate from what was it called? Was it Wilton High School or
Wilton
was
High
it
School,
like one of those
Beavers?
Yes. How could you leave?
Well, you know what's so funny is Teen Wolf was on the other day.
Yeah.
And if you recall, their high school was the Beavers. And
so awesome.
And their colors were like royal blue and gold. That's what we were. And so as a kid watching Teen Wolf, it didn't seem weird to me. I was like, hey, that's exactly what we were at our school.
Right. But God, you think that like they would have sold merch like
I know. I remember one year the homecoming theme was, because there was always like other schools when we would play them, it would always be like lick the beavers, beat the beavers, all that stuff.
Right.
And our faculty always tried to get away from stuff like that. But we were playing Solon, and the class that won the theme that year was Blow the Colon Out of Solon.
Oh, God. I mean, that's not even like innuendo.
I know. I don't know how that one got through.
Wow. Wow. Well, good for them, I guess.
Yeah.
I vacation in Oregon a lot, and, I felt like I needed to bring like hats and t-shirts and stuff back home. And it was either like the Oregon Ducks or Oregon State. I think the choice was obvious.
Yeah.
Definitely going to be the Oregon State Beavers for this guy. Yeah. So you're the Beavers and you decide, all right, we're graduating. Was Iowa State your first choice?
Iowa State was my only choice.
Wow. Like, because that was the only one they would let you in, or because that's the only place you wanted to go?
Only place I wanted to go. I was actually offered a full scholarship. I can't remember to what school in Iowa, but my folks met at Iowa State. They got married where they were at Iowa State. Both my sisters were at Iowa State and dating guys at Iowa State. I don't think people that aren't from Iowa understand what it's like to grow up the only Cyclone in the heart of Hawkeye country. You build a kind of a special identity with it, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not saying that I didn't spend too much time with that. Yeah, but
it's right.
But yes, and so no, Iowa State was. I remember when I was 2, I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be an art student at Iowa State.
And they're like, Iowa State has art?
Or not 2, in 2nd grade, but still, yeah, no, yeah. Well, because I'd gone there with my folks, and we had gone to the gallery that was at the Sheeman building, and then I got to go into the College of Design and see that, and so yeah.
Well, and like, granted, I'm a little biased, but if you're looking at beauty for a campus, hands down, Iowa State destroys U of I.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it is a beautiful old campus, and it feels warm. The other day, I was in therapy, and my therapist was like, "So did you enjoy college?" And I was like, "I fucking loved it, man! Like, it was just such a great experience." I'm not saying like bad things didn't happen while I was there. Sure. Some really fucking horrible things happened to me when I was there, but overall the experience, and I think it's because it was Iowa State, it was just such a great campus. Everything felt like home. And even still to this day, when I go back and visit campus, I just feel like I'm home.
Yeah.
Like it feels very comfortable to me. And, when you think of like an old school college campus, I mean, I'm not talking like Yale and Harvard, old school, but pretty close, really. Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, like as far as the architecture of the buildings, and I mean, there are still a lot of old buildings on campus that get used.
Yeah.
It was my only choice as well. Like I was not going to go anywhere. I did apply to UNI for some reason, but that was like a fallback if for some reason I didn't get into Iowa State, but that was not really a thing that I was afraid was going to happen.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it. I didn't bother to apply anywhere else. I didn't even cross my mind really.
And I had no reason other than I didn't want to go to Iowa.
Yeah.
I was like, I do not want to be a Hawkeye. That's not something I want. It's the people that were going there from my school at the time. I was like, yeah, I don't want to be around those assholes anymore.
Yeah.
Did you feel comfortable there right away?
Yeah. And so one thing that helped was my sisters preceding me, then we would go up a lot. I'd go attend Visha. I would do things like that. I had
a pocket knife at Visha once. No.
I did have some friends. Like I said, I hung out with older friends in high school too. So like my senior year, I was spending a lot of time in Ames actually. So I already knew how to navigate campus. I was very familiar with that.
Did you deal with any issues, because we are so similar? Did you deal with any issues once you got there of like just loneliness?
My second semester freshman year, I did.
Yeah. And what held it off until your second semester?
I think just the newness and just how exciting college was and how much I was just so excited to be out of Wilton. I think sustain me a little bit longer. But then that second semester is when, the newness of college wore off.
See, and for me, it was first semester. Like I remember like, and I don't have a particularly like close relationship with either of my parents, but I remember sending my mom emails. Like I was just like, I'm just so lonely here. Like I don't know anybody. I don't have any friends here. And my high school girlfriend, who I wasn't with anymore, also went down there. So I would like have lunch with her and stuff. And actually one of my uncles died while in the first semester. And so like she was there and came and like, hey man, this sucks. I'll hang out with you and whatever. But I'd never been in a situation where I had to like make a friend from a stranger, like, because, you saw people around in high school and you just kind of fell into friendships or whatever. But like, I'm in this building living with people, including the guy who lives in my room with me. And I don't know any of these motherfuckers, So I'm like, oh, what? So I just left my door open and played Tecmo Super Bowl until people came in and they're like, hey, is that Tecmo Super Bowl? Like, it is. Can I play? Please. Please do. And I don't know that I've talked to anybody. Like, this just came up in therapy the other day. Like, I don't know that I've talked to anybody about how lonely I felt that first semester, just because it was like one of those memories I didn't remember. And now it's very clear. And I remember how that felt. And it was just like, it was almost like a panic. Like, have I done the right thing? Should I be here? Why don't I just go home? It's like, no, idiot. I'm so glad I didn't. That would have been a fucking disaster.
Yeah, no, like I said, I was lucky enough to have not necessarily people from Wilton per se or Durant, the closest town, but like friends that I had met before, so that they actively tried to include me.
Nice.
Like swing up to my room and say, hey, like they weren't even on my floor, but they were in Helzer. And so they'd actually swing up, say, hey, we're all going to go grab lunch. Do you want to come with or something like that? And that certainly helped.
Dude, I was in Helzer all the time. I'm surprised that it took us as long to meet as we did.
Yeah, I know. Hey, a friend of mine, his girlfriend, they went to the same high school and they both went to Iowa State. They didn't know each other until after. So like,
wow, that's insane.
Yeah,
wow.
that shit happens. But yeah. Well, the other thing, like, I don't know. There was. I wouldn't ever say that I was shy. I wouldn't say that I'm necessarily innately gregarious, but I've always kind of loved just having fun with people.
Mm-hmm.
So like my freshman year, I took a class with this guy named Shane. He was from like Belmont. He was a big kind of farm boy, football player guy. His roommate was a big weightlifter, big guy. And Shane lived in Helzer as well, but I had never like acknowledged him. And one day at lunch, I saw him sitting with his roommate and his friends, and they're all eating. And I walk over to his plate. I don't say anything. I grab the Surge, since that was what everyone was drinking because they were really pushing it at the time.
Oh, God.
Grabbed the Surge from his tray. I downed it. I slammed it down and walked away. And his roommate was like, do you know that guy? And Shane immediately played along and said, no. And so this went on for like a week before finally like, okay, come on. How do you guys know each other?
It would have been a great gag where like every time you interacted with, you were totally bullying him.
Yeah.
Like every time, like, like knocking his books out of his hand. He's this great big dude. And like he gets in on it. And he just always acts like a little bit afraid of you. And then we're like, what's going on? Like, nothing.
Well, and that's the best part is Shane and I never really talked in class. I don't know what gave me the confidence to just be like, I'm going to just go do this, And then eventually we became friends and hang out in each other's dorm rooms and whatever. But, but it was kind of a stupid, bold. That's how I've always kind of met people, is just by being my dorky self.
Yeah. And I think that's, with people like us, that's really what we have to do. You just kind of blend into the background if you're just some little guy, or they expect you to be like little guy, guy syndrome, and like want to fight everybody or just run your suck all the time, which I run my mouth plenty. But, there's just certain things that'll catch people really off guard when you're a smaller guy. That will endear you, I think, to other people. Oh,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So you're at Iowa State, you're in the visual arts. And when do you discover theater?
So towards the end of my sophomore year, I was sitting with my advisor at the time. in my 3.5 years at Iowa State, I had 5 advisors, so I never particularly had a close relationship with any one of them.
Jesus.
But that first one, we were talking, and I had said something about, I don't know, I think I'd be curious about taking an acting class. It wasn't like I was in theater in high school or anything like that. And she said, oh, and she happened to be friends with Greg.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so she said, oh, actually, I know the director of the theater department. Why don't you email him, said that I sent you, and then I set up a meeting with him. And so I just went into his office and sat down and said, I just want to learn a little bit more about the theater department. I'm thinking about signing up for an acting class, kind of interested in this. And he said, do you want to be in a play? So, and I said, well, I'd like to, I'd consider auditioning. He's like, no, I need someone for a play. And so that's literally how I got cast in the very first play at Iowa State.
That is a very different relationship than I had with Greg. So I didn't really know him. That's
because he saw potential in me, Zach.
I mean, that may be, because listen to how this interaction played out. I had been taking some classes for a while, and I ended up in his acting 2 class. And I didn't know him at all before that class. And the class was pretty amazing. Like, I really liked it. So I get through the acting 2. And at that point, I'm like, I was an animal ecology major. And I'm like, this isn't going to work. Like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And so I went to him and I was like, hey, man, I think I want to change my major to performing arts. He looks me dead ass in the eye and goes, why? I'm like, well, because I enjoy it. And I think I'd be good at it. And he's like, you better be sure. Like, it definitely was not a, hey, you want to be in a play?
Yeah.
I was like, God damn it. So I run into him at the American College Theater Festival like 2 years later, because that's where he left to go run that fucking thing in DC. And I run into him at the festival and I walk up and I was like, hey, Greg, I don't know if you remember me. He's like, yeah, I remember you. And I was like, I'm here as a nominee. And he's like, congratulations, man. Like, I think you'll be able to do it. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. I'm here as a nominee. The now isn't when I really need your, like, hey, this is a good choice for you. I needed it 2 years ago when I was scared to death, but that was my kind of moment where I felt accepted finally, because everybody wanted that guy's approval. Everybody. Yeah. And I think it was just because generally his persona was that you better have his approval or else.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I can think about a couple times when I pissed him off, and it did not go well for me. Yeah. So you get involved in the program, you ended up with a minor. And as James C. Burns would point out, don't say that on air, you'll get arrested. So I originally, when I made the switch, I originally went double major. But then I realized that if I just did the minor, I could graduate a semester early.
Nice.
And I was like, I don't know that a degree in theater versus a minor in theater was going to mean a whole lot for me professionally.
Oh, I promise you it don't.
Yeah, exactly. I used to kind of get frustrated because the performing arts, particularly the theater department within that sphere, had a ton of people that never worked cast and crew on a show, never auditioned for a play. And I'm like, what are you trying to get at? Like, and not just taking a class, like they majored in it.
Right.
They got a degree in performing arts without ever stepping foot on a stage.
That's weird. Like, and I don't know if they intended to teach or what but there was, because I mean, really going through generally the same 5 or 6 people were getting cast and everything.
Yeah.
Whether that's good or not, I don't know. I don't know if it was just because there were favorites or because it was that much of a sliding scale of talent. It's too long ago for me to remember, but that is wild. And it wasn't like it wasn't its own department. It was technically a part of the music department. Yeah. Which is weird. Like everything about it was weird. I mean, I enjoyed it. I loved it. And I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, but it was just kind of a weird structure. But yeah, it definitely, I'm glad that you didn't do my program where I ended up, instead of graduating a semester early, graduating 3 semesters late. There is a part of me that sometimes wishes I would have taken a little bit more time to go through and actually get something out of my college education rather than just trying to get through it. But that's not to say that I live in a whole lot of regret there. I think for me it's more just the as I do a lot more self-discovery and as I learned
about myself through various different jobs, I realized, boy, it would have been a whole lot easier had I done this when I was, 22 rather than 42.
Oh, for sure.
Those types of things. And there is that. But at the same time, college was awesome. It really, really was.
Yeah.
I had a blast. I was always worried that I was going to treat college like our parents' generation treated high school.
Oh, like it was the best time of your life and that's all you ever talk about? Yeah.
Yeah. Like I didn't want to peak in college just like everyone else was peaking in high school. I do think there's a difference, but at the same time, you're asking a 17-year-old kid what he wants to do for the rest of his life, right?
Right.
And then he graduates, he's like 22 and you're asking him what he wants to do. When I was 22, I thought like dancing with 22-year-olds was a good idea. Like I had, I didn't make wise choices when I was 22, let alone, what's going to dictate the trajectory of my life for the next 60 years. So,
yeah, I mean, I can't make responsible choices now. I certainly couldn't do it then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Looking back, it was pretty wild to think, especially like when you go on to a college campus now and you look at and you're like, where'd all these children come from? Yeah. It's like when you really realize how young people are when they're in college.
If you even see them, because half of the time they're taking 90% online classes.
Oh, yeah. And that is a mistake. Like I used to run the internship program for the company that I work at, and Kaplan University used to send people to our internship program. And then I found out that it was their major for our line of work was entirely online. And I'm like, that is not valuable. You need to learn how to interact with human beings.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to change the curriculum. All right, we're done taking your people. Like, it's just like, it's a waste of our time. It's a waste of their time. And I suppose the argument could be made like, well, this is how they'll learn to interact with human beings, is by coming and doing their internship. But it was one of those things where they were doing a major and were never going to work in the field.
Yeah.
And it was just like, well, no. I mean, and people need that human interaction. Like, I get that there are introverts, but generally you're going to be a more well-rounded person if you've had experience with, people.
Well, and there's certain careers where you're going to be forced to, there's certain careers where an introvert can go in and not really have to deal with a whole lot. What you're looking for, they're going to have to interact with people.
Yeah. Well, it's like, could you imagine during COVID when they were doing like theater classes online? You're like, are you insane? I think everybody should just take a year off. Like, I don't think that anybody's going to get anything from this.
Yeah. How are you supposed to be reading anything, feeling the energy? There's such an energy on stage that you can't replicate.
Right. So you finish up at Iowa State, you graduate in 3.5 years. Mm-hmm. And then did you get married while you were still in school?
No.
Okay.
I graduated December of 2000. I got married in May of 2023, and then I moved up here in June of 2023. So I still stayed in Ames for 2.5 years.
Hold on. You said 2023.
2003. 2003. Sorry.
Hey, where did the last 20 years of your life go? I don't know.
Sometimes I ask that. That's all a blur. No, so 2003. Yeah. So I was still in Ames for 2.5 years before coming up here.
And what were you doing there?
This is going to be kind of a good segue into my actual adulthood, but there's a sign shop out just east of Iowa State Center, east of Hilton and Jack Trice and everything. And so I was working on design and production of vinyl signs.
Oh, okay. And you did that while you were in Ames. And then what drove you to Minnesota? As
I said, I got married in May of 2003, and she was going to vet school up here in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she had applied to Iowa State, Minnesota, and Colorado State. She got into all three, and we decided that we should do a change. She shouldn't just stay at Iowa State.
Okay. Was she from Iowa?
She was born in Iowa, and her family now lives in Iowa. She grew up mostly in the St. Louis area. She graduated high school in Florida.
So either way, it was going to be out-of-state tuition.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Got it. Absolutely. And in fact, I think there were a lot easier ways of establishing residency here in Minnesota. Okay. So she only paid a single year of out of state for that.
Nice. Because that's going to be expensive anyway. So it's yeah. So you guys get up there. I'm trying to keep track of the timeline. Get married up there or get married in Iowa?
We got married in Iowa.
Okay.
So yeah, we got married in Des Moines.
Okay. All right. So you get up there. She's going to vet school. What are you doing up there?
So I started off in a contract position that went to full time at the headquarters of Best Buy.
Okay.
So I was working in retail graphic services, goods not for resale, basically all the things that go into a store that isn't merchandise being sold, and all the look and feel, the sign package, the environmental design pieces of that.
Still incorporating art into your daily grind that you're doing. Yeah.
So it was still at least tangentially related to my degree.
Right. So you do that for how long? I
did that until it was about 6.5 years. I was there
with Best Buy. And what was the impetus to, like, did you just decide it wasn't what you wanted anymore, or were you offered something else somewhere else? Those who do the podcast will begin after this short message.
I need a promo to show what the podcast is about.
Brown pop.
We're going to be chatting to guests who've overcome adversity, people who have achieved greatness.
And then there's us.
He's about to tell me the worst news ever. And he said, really sorry, there's been a 22-car pileup. Everyone's dead except one person.
I want to know the Randy Spelling story.
My childhood was incredible.
My dad at 7 years old being called the F slur.
What a piece of shit, as you said.
What a piece of shit.
Why are there balloons up on the screen?
Is there balloons on our screen?
What kind of show is this?
Yeah, that's right. But everybody will have a story.
Everybody.
The Brown Pipe Podcast is out now. Get it wherever you get your podcasts.
I did that until it was about 6.5 years. I was there
with Best Buy. And what was the impetus to, like, did you just decide it wasn't what you wanted anymore, or were you offered something else somewhere else?
So I decided that I was ready for a change, and I did not feel like I was getting put in a position to get that change at Best Buy.
Okay.
Best Buy, meanwhile, was going through some financial difficulties, as they've continued to. They're like a third the size they were when I was there.
Yeah.
And so they knew they were going to have to do another round of layoffs. And so what they did is they offered these voluntary separation packages to people.
Sure.
That said, if you agree to leave without, that way we can avoid layoffs. If you're looking to leave, we'll give you a nice little cushion. And so
right.
I decided that I just really wanted a change. I'd started taking a couple part-time classes. So I'd already got my master's degree in management while I was at Best Buy, but then I was still kind of bored, and I was taking some classes in like cognitive science. And so I said, well, I'll take that. I'll take some time off, and and I worked in a cognitive neuroscience lab, and I took a bunch of classes and prepared myself to maybe go to grad school for cognitive neuroscience. And
that's a hard left turn.
Yeah, absolutely.
What got you interested in that?
Boy, I really wish I could tell you. I think, someone has always said that most people become psych majors because they want to understand themselves.
How's that going?
So even though I was in the arts, I was always really strong in the sciences, and I was always still very much, a scientific method type of guy. I don't know. I was reading some books. I got really into it. I ended up taking like this one class in neurophysics and signal detection theory and things like that, that I really kind of enjoyed. But, at that point, my wife had graduated. She had a ton of debt. We wanted to maybe start a family. And so it just didn't seem like it made sense for me to go another 4 years without like a real income.
So that kind of stuff, is that basically how information is transmitted throughout the brain?
The signal detection theory is really interesting. It's really more kind of about predictive behaviors and things like that.
Okay. So it's more of a it is more of a psychology thing than a biology thing.
Well, it's a branch of neurophysics, because it's really talking about how the brain processes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that what I just asked you?
Yeah, sort of.
What a dick. Like, hey, it sounds like Zach might have kind of a little bit of a grasp on what's going on here. I really need him to look stupid.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No. Absolutely. I think.
Yeah, fair. I expect nothing less. So you decide, okay, I need a regular income. I need to not be going to school right now. So then, what does that take you?
A guy that I had worked with at Best Buy had left, and at the time, Buffalo Wild Wings headquarters were up here, and so he was working over there. And he said, "Hey, I know you said something about looking. I've got a position. Would you be interested?"
And what kind of position was that?
Project management.
and that involves what?
Well, so that was more project management for IT projects. So like they were going to implement SharePoint. And so I had to shepherd the implementation of SharePoint throughout the enterprise.
The fuck is a SharePoint?
SharePoint is a Microsoft cloud-based tool that can both be public-facing and private-facing for file sharing. A lot of websites are built on SharePoint. A lot of company intranets are built on SharePoint. Yeah. You know, a communication tool for corporate to the field, to the stores, things like that.
How does your resume
make sense? It doesn't.
Yeah. No, I mean, especially to that.
Yeah.
Like, how did what did your cover letter look like?
So in my career, I can think of, I've had a lot of jobs. I can think of only 2 jobs where I wasn't essentially recruited into them.
That's insane.
And so it's really about the people that you know and know what your skill set is, rather than me having to sell myself.
But like, I can see Buffalo Wild Wings saying, yeah, we need a visual designer of some sort because he's done that. He's got a degree in that. He's established like, hey, Tim, we know that you're an artist and a former theater guy, and you took some neuroscience classes. Could you come run our IT? Like, what a weird, It
is, but again, so I'd worked with that person at Best Buy, so they knew what my skill set was. Yeah. They knew that, that job was more about cross-coordination, organization, being able to influence sideways and upwards in ways that a lot of other people can't.
Right.
Navigating the enterprise. And so that's how that came out. And so then eventually I moved over from IT to food and beverage projects. And that was a lot of fun.
So what did that involve? Like picking new menu items, or what kind of stuff were you doing? So
we did get involved in that, on the bar side. Then a lot of the mixologists came. We had 2 people who, were bartenders formerly and did a lot of that came in collaboration with the vendors. So, all of the big liquor companies have, master mixologists on staff, and they would bring in and work on that. And then food, we had someone who ran the test kitchen, and he would ideate on a lot of things. Our food vendors would help on a lot of that stuff. Kind of the biggest project I worked on in food and beverage was one that probably burnt me out the most. So we had been a Coke restaurant forever. And when you're in the restaurant industry, you're either Coke or you're Pepsi. You're not going to sell both. And the reason is, if you decide, no, I want to make my customers happy, you're not going to get any of the advertising support. You're not going to get any of the rebates. You're not going to get any of that. You're going to spend twice as much on your soda, because, they're so liberal with what things soda can pay for. There's a little Pepsi logo that represents 10% of the picture. That's an in-store Buffalo Wild Wings ad that you didn't have to pay for.
Right. Right.
And then the massive rebates that come with that. And so we had been with Coke forever, and there was this leadership team, a lot higher than me. So members of like EVPs and gigantic franchise owners. Like there was one guy who owned Manhattan, the Times Square, and Las Vegas, and all these giant ones. Guys that would fly in a private jet to come to the meeting or whatever. And they were talking about whether or not they should take it out, and then they should take it to an RFP, a request for proposal. And the vice president of purchasing was retiring, so his give a shit was like nothing. He did not care. And they were having a lot of very unproductive meetings. And my boss said, hey, because she was involved, and she said, hey, I'm just having a really hard time with these meetings. I suggested that we bring you in because you're really kind of good at coordinating that project management piece or whatever. And so I just thought I was going to be in there to advise. And so I went in and I sat in one meeting. They asked for my opinion. I said, okay, well, I think honestly, I'll just sit down with Kevin. We can talk through those things and he can bring it back, and then you guys will be all set. Next thing I know, I'm invited to all these meetings, and I'm having to basically walk through the request for a proposal with people all around the country. And then we sent it out, and the award came back, and Pepsi far outshone Coke. And so they're like, okay, well, Tim, that was great. So how are we going to implement this? And I was like, you're kidding me, right? I've never been an operator. I've done a little bartending, but I've never been an operator. They're like, no, we just need you to kind of do that. And so then I ended up getting, having to try to, I got blamed for a lot of it because a lot of people didn't want to switch from Coke to Pepsi. Right. I didn't make the choice. I just helped facilitate their making of the choice.
So two things about that. One, the RFPs go out.
Yeah.
Coke submits something. Pepsi submits something. You end up picking. So you went with Coke or went with Pepsi? Sorry.
Went with Pepsi, yeah.
So you went with Pepsi. Meanwhile, RC Cola's going, the fuck? And was this a little bit a problem or a solution in search of a problem? Like, I mean, you really can't go wrong, Coke or Pepsi. I
think we were vastly overpaying or not taking, like, Coke really just took for granted that they had us.
Oh, okay.
In fact, what they returned for an RFP was really unimpressive compared to Pepsi's.
So they weren't trying to woo you because it was like an old married couple. Like, yeah. I'm not gonna wear nice clothes or take you out for dinner because we're already together.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good analogy. And Pepsi, presses with pass-through rights to the NFL, right? So if there's a Pepsi Buffalo Wild Wings co-branded campaign, well, Pepsi can mention the Super Bowl because they've got NFL.
Oh,
right.
And
so if Pepsi is 51% of the ad, whereas we always just had to say the big game.
Right.
Come and get your wings for the big game.
Yeah.
Type of thing. So a lot of like the pass-through rights.
Cricket, right? It was a cricket game.
Yeah. A lot of those, a lot of the celebrities. Right. So right away we had commercials with, some of their musicians and with, like Andy Dalton was in one at the time. And so because of all of their other properties that they had, and then, they are big in the snack game, too. So, a Doritos crusted wing and a commercial with Britney Spears and a
Doritos crusted wing dipped in Mountain Dew.
Yeah, basically.
Jesus.
Yeah. So I mean, they just came in with kind of a lot more to offer, and so yeah. So now it's a matter of.
I mean, they had a lot more to gain, If they bring in Buffalo Wild Wings that they didn't have before, a national chain, Coke already has you, so they're like, well, I don't think they must not have realized what they stood to lose.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. I think and the rep that for Coke that had us. I felt bad for him. He was, you could tell he was devastated. I think he felt blindsided by it, but
yeah, I suppose the Great Buffalo Wings Coke versus Pepsi Civil War happens. And This is what year?
This was over the span of probably late 2012 to 2014.
Okay. So you're probably just becoming a dad right around then, right?
Not quite. So Lily was born in 2015.
Okay. So she's a little bit younger than my oldest daughter. So you're at B-Dubs, part of this huge project, burns you out.
Yep.
Right.
They did send me to baseball fantasy camp, though. That was fun.
Such a corporate America is so weird. It's so weird. Like, I get it. Like, I get what they're doing. They're trying to, do fun stuff so that you don't burn out. But clearly it didn't work.
Yep.
Now, this, if I remember the conversations we've had, is kind of where Buffalo Wild Wings is kind of your exposure to the beverage industry, the beer industry. Right. So how does that happen?
I was working on large projects like the Pepsi stuff, but I was working on a lot of smaller stuff. I had always been kind of plugged into the beer scene here locally just because it was a smaller community back then, Right. And I had friends and that were kind of all involved. So, we worked on some beer projects at Buffalo Wild Wings too, which has got me a little bit more involved. And then I started working part-time at a brewery while I was still working at Buffalo Wild Wings, just to make some extra cash in anticipation of starting a family and getting ready to buy a new house and stuff like that. So it just kind of seemed like a natural transition. So I already gotten a couple certifications and things like that. And, I'd already got my service safe certification and stuff like that too. So it just seemed like a kind of a natural transition. One would kind of help support the other, bartending would help support my support of what I do for Buffalo Wild Wings, and what I do at Buffalo Wild Wings would help better inform me when I was, at the brewery.
That was your role at the brewery as bartender?
At first, yeah.
Which at a brewery, that's a pretty sweet bartending role, right? Because you pour beer.
It's easy. You're not mixing cocktails.
Yeah.
You know, it's so funny because, like, you know, you'd be working some night and people are like, I'm in the weeds, and I'm like, we pour beer.
Hey, would you? I need you to mix me a lager. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Done.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I can do that. Shit.
It's you know, I've a buddy of mine still works at a couple breweries, and he still just laughs about that. He's like, I'm not mixing anything,
right?
You know.
Yeah, I mean, and you're naturally sociable, so that probably worked for you pretty well.
No, it was nice. I had regulars, you know. I love that. That was always good.
How do you make the transition then
to in back?
To going in the back and learning a thing.
So they started needing some help in back. And this was also when I was getting burnt out at Buffalo Wild Wings. And so I was like, well, I'm going to start learning more over here and just paying less attention to Buffalo Wild Wings. So learning like packaging, some cellar stuff.
Right.
And then finally one day I'm just like, this is where I want to be. I don't want to do Buffalo Wild Wings. And so, you know, my wife was a working veterinarian at the time. And I thought we were probably financially to a point, you know, this was after Lily was born. Now at this point in 2015, where it was like, okay, now it's time to just make this a full-time thing. So I quit Buffalo Wild Wings, and then Badger Hill, that first brewery, offered to be like my sponsor for the brewing program that I did. I did the American Brewers Guild Intensive Brewing Science and Engineering program.
Did you have to go somewhere to do that?
You can so I did what was called the Working Brewers program. So that was all remote, except for they do like one weekend where you go to Vermont. But you can do most, because I was at a brewery.
Sure.
You know, normally they'd want you to be hands-on, but you're doing your hands-on with your host brewer. And so like the head brewer of Badger Hill had done the same program. And so he basically becomes kind of like a pseudo adjunct instructor for all of that stuff.
Right. And since Vermont is hideous and ugly and gross, you're like, do I really wanna? I guess I will. Like, Vermont. I've been to Vermont, man, and it is a Hallmark movie. All the time. It's ridiculous.
No, it absolutely is. Yeah,
absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, it's so beautiful there. So you go through that program. Obviously, you must do well, and they transition you to brewing. Then I assume.
Yeah. So I was doing some stuff in packaging, and then the packaging manager that they had left. And so they just said, all right, Sam, you're going to be the packaging manager now. I'm like, whoa. But they did. So then I did that, and I started learning a little bit more about everything else. And then I transitioned over to being a brewer.
So what was it about that industry that you're like, man, this feels like home, that I know I want to do this instead of doing working for B-dubs?
I had been a home brewer for years. So the chance to turn a hobby into a career, the whole saying of
what's that like?
Yeah, that whole thing of love what you do and you won't work a day in your life. That's bullshit. But it is one of those things where, I got to the point where I did not want to go to work at Best Buy and at Buffalo Wild Wings, where it was painful, and I would stall in the morning, and to know I was going to have to sit in a stupid meeting or answer a stupid email or run a stupid report, and it's like nothing felt fulfilling about it in any way, shape, or form.
Wonder what that's like.
But with beer, you're making a product that people use to celebrate.
Right.
They use to commiserate, to maybe give them a little bit of courage, help them relax.
To use it to bloviate. They use it. And that also, like, a lot of the stuff I worked on, whether that be at, Best Buy or Buffalo Wild Wings, when you start it can be like years out before you see your results. In brewing, it's 1 to 2 months before I'm tasting that product and knowing that I made it. So there's a little bit, it's not instant gratification, but there's a little bit more of a gratification with all of that. And, just being able to work with my hands, do physical manual labor. I hadn't done that in forever. And it was really good for me at the time. How much of it was the fact that you could actually see people experiencing your product?
Oh yeah. No, I think that was huge. Right.
Yeah.
If I took part in a formulation of a new style of nachos at Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever, you'd see that feedback online, but a lot of it's all noise. And there's, I hate to sound elitist, but the people leaving Facebook comments on a craft brewery's webpage care a little bit more about the product than the people leaving comments on Buffalo Wild Wings Facebook page.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
You don't see a lot of y'all MFers better bring the hot Tennessee back.
So here's this, for example, you're not going to get somebody generally on a craft beers page saying, I ordered this beer and gosh, it was an IPA. I hate these IPAs. Because they know what they're going there for. Whereas you go to Buffalo Wild Wings, they happen to have an IPA on tap, and they get that IPA. They're like, "What the shit is this? This ain't Busch Light." So I don't think it's elitist. I think it's you know what you're going in both of those places. Generally, you're going in there because you know what you want. Buffalo Wild Wings, because it's every Buffalo Wild Wings is the same everywhere you go. It's like going to McDonald's on a road trip, right? Whereas you go into a craft beer brewery, odds are you're going in to try something new.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing too is Buffalo Wild Wings is this big generic entity, right? Yeah. So they don't feel like they're getting mad at a real person when they're complaining on Facebook's page.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But these smaller breweries, they tell their story about the owner and the founder, and they're community connected, and they're a lot more local. And so now I'm not yelling at this big corporate monster.
Right.
I'm yelling at this dude with a wife and 2 kids, and now it humanizes, I think, the interactions a little bit more.
Well, a lot of the times they're yelling at Buffalo Wild Wings, they're yelling at the waitress Stacy, who was dumber than a bag of hair and brought my food and it didn't taste well. It's like, hey, stupid, Stacy didn't make the food. Like, you're yelling at the wrong person. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I would agree. There's definitely there is a huge difference. There's going to be a difference in what people want and what they're complaining about, for sure. And how they do it, how they complain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although a couple of your examples about my beer is an IPA and I hate IPAs, you just spend 5 minutes on Untapped, the beer rating app, and you'll see a lot of that.
I honestly only go on Untapped to talk about how much I love a beer. Like if I don't like it, I generally just don't even do anything.
That's the way it should be. I made a Hefeweizen at Badger Hill called "There's Always Money in the Banana Stand." I couldn't not make an Arrested Development reference at some point. And Hefeweizens, if you don't know, during fermentation produce isoamyl acetate. Well, isoamyl acetate oil is what we extract from bananas for banana flavoring and like candies and things like that. So it's the exact same compound. So that's why Hefeweizens have a really banana characteristic, right? And so I made that beer. It's very clearly described as having banana characteristics. It's got banana in the name. This guy jumps on Untapped to rip it apart. He said, first of all, bananas have one place and it's on trees, not in beer. And I was like, well, A, bananas don't grow on trees. You might want to look that up. B, you ordered a beer knowing full well that it had banana in it.
Right.
Do you complain about pineapple on your pizza when you ordered pineapple on your pizza? Like all of that, it was just like, it just blew my mind that's the way people react. And yes, if you know you don't like it,
right.
I didn't hide it from you. Why did you order it?
Surprise! We called it raisins.
And by the way, it doesn't contain bananas. It just contains a similar compound. So
it just tastes like. I was listening to a podcast earlier today, and it's like taste and smell are the two things that a lot of times the way you describe them is by describing something else. And I had never thought of it. It's like if you see a house, I think the example they gave, that house, I can tell you that it's 40 foot tall. I can tell you it has 5 windows and the windows are white. But it's like, hey, that smells like cookies. It's not like
it's like, everything tastes like chicken, right?
Right.
Ironically, except eggs, the thing that should taste more like chicken than frogs.
Right. I don't want to eat frogs. Frogs are gross.
I had frog legs.
I don't want
frog legs.
There's certain things that I just can't wrap my head around. That and testicles of any kind is probably just not going to happen.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
you prefer the gargoyle. Anyway,
I should have stopped before I started.
Yeah, I know.
I'll take things Tim's ex-wife said for 1,000. So you are starting the process of brewing, and what is that hierarchy? Like, I know that there's you got head brewer, you got master brewers, how does that all work? What do all those things mean?
I mean, it kind of depends on what brewery you're at. Most brewers don't like to use the term master brewer. If you see a brewer calling themselves a master brewer, the rest of us hate him.
Do you do that since you're a self-loather?
No, I just hate myself for a lot of other reasons.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so people say master brewer or brewmaster or brewmeister, all of that. I just giggle. You know, most places we just all refer to each other as brewers. And some might say head brewer, some might say lead brewer, and they certainly have their roles. In some places, you know, there are people that like Keith Villa, the guy who created Blue Moon and basically popularized an American wheat for the entire country. He has his PhD. Call him a master brewer. That's completely fine.
Right.
But like most of the places around here, you know, you're probably going to have one head brewer who's in charge of kind of all of the operations. Some might call him a director of operations or something like that. Then you're going to have a lead. And you might split your leads to be like someone who's, you know, head of packaging, or you might have someone who kind of does both, depending on what your packaging looks like. And then you're going to have some people that, you know, you might still refer to as brewers, but they almost never hit the brew stand. The brew deck itself is probably the easiest part of the job. Like, it's the most repetitive. It's the part where I always say I could train a monkey to do that. If the recipe is good and the process is good, then I really kind of don't care who's up on that brew deck. Like, I can't tell the difference between Todd's brew of that and my brew of that and Steve's brew of that and Derek's brew of that.
Is it just basically they just have to follow the steps?
Yeah, in a lot of ways. You have to, you know, I mean, you have to be smart enough to troubleshoot if things are wrong, right? Because we're constantly, when you're brewing, you're constantly checking pH or, you know, bricks or gravity and looking at all of those things.
Hey, you want to take 2 seconds and explain those two industry terms that nobody knows what they mean?
Well, pH, I would think you would all know.
That's why I said 2 instead of 3. You self-righteous prick.
I know. A lot of brewers don't really use bricks. They more use specific gravity or degrees Plato. They're all just basically a measure of the density. So you're trying to find out what the sugars are.
You're my density.
Oh. I was going to make a Crispin Glover joke, but I'm going to...
rats! There's rats everywhere!
So you get... Okay, that wasn't fair. You get bricks is used a lot, like when determining the mix of syrup to soda water in a soda fountain.
Where does that term come from?
I don't remember.
It's like
BRIX.
It sounds very like random.
Well, I mean, think about all these other terms like watt and ohm and erg, and they all, they're usually somebody's name.
Yeah. Is bricks somebody's name?
Probably.
That's the first guy they put in. Like, how long does it take him to sink to the bottom? We're going to call it bricks then.
Yeah. But basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to measure the density so you can figure out, in theory, all that density is sugar. And for the most part in beer is we just treat it kind of differently than just saying it's, just pure raw sugar like Brix does. But really what you're trying to do is you're trying to say, you're measuring as you're running off, you're trying to measure what the density of each kind of portion of that mash that you've pulled off, so you can try to hit your target density. And then you're going to, after a fermentation, you're going to track it, see how much it's going to go. And then you can say, okay, we started here, we got here. Theoretically, our alcohol percent is right here.
Okay. So for the uninitiated, like in the simplest terms, and like obviously you could probably do a whole hour on this, but like the basic steps of brewing a beer.
I mean, you start off with recipe creation, right? Then you source your materials. A lot of times, the malt in particular, there are still a few places around the country, not really many, that do their own malting. That's really expensive. It's really hard. It's not worth it. So most of us are buying malt from maltsters.
And malt is turning what into what?
So what you're doing when you're kilning or malting barley, basically what you're doing is you're causing some sprouting to get germination. So you really are getting a lot of that, those starches expressed so that you can really get that. And then you also get color and flavor components from it.
Okay, good.
So mostly we're going to already start off with malted grain. You may or may not have gotten it pre-milled. I always prefer not milled. And so then we put it through a mill. It gets mixed with water, and that is called the mash.
Okay.
And that is where the water temperatures are activating enzymes to convert the starch from the grain into sugar.
Okay, sure.
So you run off that sugar water, and depending on your system, it's going to go to a boil kettle, and that's where you're boiling the beer. The A is going to act as a disinfectant, and B, it does kill off some processes, and it does maybe add a little bit of things like kettle caramelization. But then it's also going to, you add your hops, and they're going to get isomerized, just a way that like a certain amount of bitterness is going to be coming from those alpha acids that are going to create that kind of bitterness, and then later additions create more flavor and aroma compounds that come out. You cool it, you put it in a fermenter, you pitch yeast, you let the yeast. So before yeast is added, it's called wort. It's not called beer.
It's called what?
Wort. W-O-R-T.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah. And it's there's an old saying that brewers make wort, yeast makes beer.
Oh, sure.
Right. And so then the yeast ferments it. You might dry hop it. You crop the yeast out.
I did a lot of dry hopping in high school.
Anyway, and then so then you package it.
And this is probably a super loaded question, but like I prefer like specialty and craft beers, and I think that it's a lot of it is because when I was younger, I didn't like dark chocolate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hated it. Love dark chocolate now, right?
Yeah.
I prefer specialty and craft beers because there's a flavor there. There's some kind of flavor profile. There's something, and for lack of a better term, like there's substance, right?
Yep.
It's crazy to me that when you think of your Bud Lights and your Michelobes and all this other stuff, like the process exists.
Yep.
And the beer ends up tasting so flat, so boring.
Yeah.
And it's like, but that's what sells the most. And like, that's frustrating to me because, and that's, so like if I go to Hy-Vee is a grocery store around here, you guys got them up there now. You're obviously familiar with them because you're from Iowa. They have a separate wine and spirits store that they run usually within the area of it. And so when I go into Hy-Vee Wine and Spirits, there's one a block away from my house. So I go in there quite a bit. I'm not going to go into the back cooler. I'm going to hit that specialty beer aisle because I want something that I'm going to enjoy drinking.
Are they keeping that stuff on a warm shelf?
The specialty beer stuff?
Yeah.
Fuck no. It's in a cooler, but I mean like the walk-in cooler is where like, your old Milwaukee and your Budweiser and stuff. No, it's just open. And it's kind of crazy to me that, I mean, I know the whole concept of put the stuff everybody's going to buy clear to the back. So they have to walk by other stuff that they may then grab. But I'm kind of surprised that the specialty stuff isn't in a back cooler and having the stuff that everybody's going to buy right out front. But I wish there would have been more specialty stuff when we were in college, because I think my tastes would have developed a lot sooner. Now, granted, I didn't have any fucking money, so there was a lot of natural ice drank, in college, but just the idea that most of America just drinks whatever they can get down the fastest is bizarre to me.
So I will say that I don't shit on the macros. I think some of them are some of the best beers there. It's just more nuance, and I can appreciate some of the subtleties, but also that comes from me understanding the process and me knowing how hard it is to make a beer like that.
Yeah, for me, it's just like it seems so. It has just a mass-produced feel to it, because it is indeed mass-produced. To me, it's kind of like the difference between going to Menards and buying a piece of furniture as opposed to going to the Amish and buying a piece of furniture.
Yeah, but like you'll notice if you go to a lot of breweries, that we're all trying to make our version of Coors.
Yeah,
we're all trying to do that.
But I feel like even once the brewery makes their version of Coors, it's still going to have more flavor because, I'm sure every brewery wants to blow up and sell to InBev.
I don't think they're doing it for that. I think they're doing it because if you ask brewers what they're drinking after work, it's hams. It's High Life.
Really? Oh God.
Yeah. It's Banquet.
Oh, well, Banquet. I'm on board with Banquet. Banquet's not terrible.
Yeah.
But it's also not super common. Like, that's just recently come back, but yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've had, I don't know how many hams I've had in the last month compared to anything else. I don't know how many High Lifes. You go around and ask as many brewers what they're drinking after work, and you're going to be amazed at how many of them say High Life, how many of them say hams, how many of them, yeah.
I even before I discovered like any kind of specialty beers, I only would drink High Life because it was cheap. I would sweat it out the next day. You can tell,
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's no old Milwaukee, but it's, you know, Miller High Life, the champagne of beers, is not a champagne and barely a beer.
I like myself a High Life.
Oh man.
I think sometimes when you're spending so much time around shouting, sometimes you appreciate a whisper.
That's what whiskey's for.
but I mean, whiskey's a lot more complex. I think that's what I mean is like when you have all these things that have all these adjuncts or triple dry hopped or, you know, all of these, you know, 7 different malts and all that stuff in there. Sometimes it feels like it's almost missing the main component that is beer. What I have found is there's some brewers that are really good at those types of beers, but if you take away that out, you don't get the whisper. You never heard the whisper because all of the noise was covering it up. And they're not maybe necessarily as good of a brewer, but those other brewers that I really like that can make something that is like, you know, one of the best double IPAs that I've ever had, or fruited IPA that I've ever had. And then they strip that away and they just make their American light lager, and it tastes like I'm just drinking a banquet. Those are the ones that I really like. I mean, I made 2 beers. One was technically a cream ale, but I remember the first time I handed it to another brewer, he's like, I thought I was drinking a Budweiser. And it was like the best compliment I could ever have gotten.
That's crazy to me because like I, you know, when I decided I liked dark chocolate, every time I eat a milk chocolate now, I'm like, this is, where's the chocolate? Yeah, it's kind of how I feel. It's like, you know, it's like, and I think I kind of feel the same way when it comes to like being somewhere where I have to get a Miller Lite. And it's just like, do I have to? Like, what else you got, man? Like,
but I mean, also, man, there is just something about a High Life after mowing the lawn on a hot day. The last thing I want to do is grab an 8% double dry hopped Imperial IPA. I'll throw up.
I'm like, is it cold? Sold.
Oh yeah.
Speaking of completely off topic, but before I forget, have you seen Back Pocket made these the Iowa State? They're the official craft beer of Iowa State. Have you seen those cans?
Mm-hmm.
They are gorgeous.
They're great cans.
Like, I mean, and the beer's not bad. But like the cans are so perfect. Like you know, you got the black on white or the white on black or whatever, and even the top of the can is black. Like it's like they're beautiful. And then the Cardinal and Gold ones are just, I think it's because they're so vibrant. Like even the black and white are very vibrant. Like that's a perfect example to me of they saw me coming. They're like, I'm going to get this idiot's attention with this shiny nickel here. But then I got it home and I actually liked the beer. So that helped.
Those colored toppers, those anodized colored toppers will eat up your chalk on your candy line faster than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
I always like to steer clear of those.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't have a canning line, so I don't give a shit.
No, absolutely. I get, you know, I mean, Monster, who made those things such a big deal. But,
I suppose. Yeah. Did we get all the way through the process of the beer?
Yeah.
Okay. So you're brewing and you're at Badger Hill. I remember you being at Badger Hill. So you're there for how long?
I was there for about 6 years.
6 years. Okay. So
5.5 maybe. Yeah.
So your time there starts to wind down. You decide to do what?
So when I decided, I had been the head brewer there for a little over a year. That we'd gone through some ownership changes. We'd gone through some other struggles. I was having some pretty significant mental health struggles. I'd gotten divorced a year earlier. Medication was causing some pretty wicked side effects. And so I had actually talked to someone who had a different project that I was going to kind of contract consult on. So I left in February of 2020.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
God. Oh man, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So that all kind of fell through, but it sort of worked out because, you know, my daughter had distance learning.
Right.
I was going to have to find a job or not work to be here for distance learning anyway.
Right.
So, yeah. So basically, I just took a year off. And then in 2021, I was like, you know what? This is maybe a good time to make a transition anyway. But then in 2021, a friend of mine that owned a different brewery, owned 612, gave me a call. I remember I was in Target, gave me a call, and he said, you know, we chatted for a little bit. He's like, hey, I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind. He's like, I know that you're probably looking for something else, but wouldn't mind coming and working here for a while. And so I made that switch. It was great. I got to work with a former brewer of mine from Badger Hill. And, you know, like I said, that's not a job that I applied for. That's just a job that I got recruited into.
I mean, that makes a little bit more sense, though. Like, resume says head brewer, go work at brewery. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Like, now if they're like, hey, I've got this project I want you to work on. We're breeding pandas. Tim? I mean, it's so random. But
and so then I did that for a year, and then Unmapped, the head brewer there has been a friend of mine forever, and so I went over there.
So you went from 612 to Unmapped. All right.
Yep. And then made it to Dashfire Distilling.
Right. So when you make the transition to distilling, like what's the biggest difference in the two environments? Even, like, I mean, obviously it's a completely different process, but like, how has that transition happened for you? I mean, obviously you understand alcohol and how alcohol works, but you're getting involved in a whole new process. How's that transition happen? Particularly
for like Dashfire, because it's a lot of like canned cocktails, right?
Okay, sure.
So I feel like the neat thing about the canned cocktail and why craft beer should be more worried about canned cocktails than they were anything else right now is because I don't want to say beer is just beer, but beer is just beer. And we've kind of done a lot of things to death, right? You can add fruit to beer, you can add spices to beer, whatever. But like you could have 6 different kinds of old fashions.
Right.
You know, and then you got gin drinks, and they're way different. And that's not like the difference between like a stout and a lager. That's like the difference between like a lager and a TGI Fridays mudslide. It's, you know, and so you've got a lot more of that component. So it's a lot more, you know, people like to compare brewers to bakers, and I say it's really not the same thing. It's not anywhere close. Or like a chef. It's really not anywhere close. The canned cocktail space gets a little bit more into that. So that to me is probably the big one. The cultures they're just different.
Sure.
At the craft level anyway. You know, a lot of the craft brewers, it's really this rising tide lifts all ships. This week, I helped a friend at one brewery get hops from a friend at another brewery. Not in the industry anymore.
Right.
But because I still have the connections, I was still helping get those guys connected on all that stuff.
And technically, these guys are competitors, but they're willing to help each other out.
Yeah. Yep. And that happens all the time.
Yeah. And I guess I can see the appeal to being in that industry. That's also a community.
Oh, it absolutely is a community. Yeah. The amount of times we let people, you know, borrow equipment from each other. Maybe you have a can piercer and I need some cans tested. Can I bring them over? Oh, hey, I just realized that I got shorted a bag of Crystal 40 on my last order. Do you have one I can come steal it from you? You know, a lot of that stuff. And, you know, we really try to support each other at breweries and at beer fests and things like that. So, it definitely, for me, as much as I said that, you know, beer helps people get a sense of belonging, maybe it breaks down some barriers. The industry itself had a lot of that effect on me too. Not alcohol related. Now,
as long as you were in the industry, did you see as the space got more choked up, did you see less of that? Because, you know, when the craft beer industry first takes off, you've got all kinds of room for everybody, you know, and now everybody and their sister has a craft brewery. I mean, they are everywhere. I just saw a thing on one of the Oregon pages that I follow. They're like, hey, what's your favorite craft brewery? And this is just on the coast. I only saw one repeated twice, and all the rest of them, like, it was like 200 comments, and it was all different places. It's a pretty saturated market. Have you seen that affect the community aspect of it?
I don't really think I have.
Wow.
It's interesting. Craft beer is in an interesting time. So this past May at the Craft Brewers Conference, which I did not attend, but I read the recap of and downloaded the documents. Every year that they've been keeping track of the stat, more breweries open than close. Last year, aside from the pandemic, if you throw out 2020, last year they were almost about dead even, as many opened as closed. And so far this year, they're actually trending. There's going to be more closures than openings in the first time in like 20 years.
Kind of shows that the market is either starting to equalize or even tip, right?
That is definitely, there's a lot of factors, but that is definitely probably something that's going on. I've actually noticed, and I've even read reports of shelf space for craft beer actually shrinking. A lot of people are pulling out of distribution. The cost of goods, sure, beer price has gone up, right? You've seen pints go from $5 to $7 to $8 in the last 5 years. But the cost of goods to make that has grown so much that when they're going from $5 to $7, they're not doing that because they get the same margin. They're just looking at price elasticity and said, well, you won't buy it if I have this. I can still make a profit off of it, but I'm not going to make nearly as much as I did before.
Right.
So that's been a big challenge. The other thing is consumer habits have changed. Younger people aren't drinking like they used to. And if they are, they're drinking cocktails, seltzers, things like that.
Right.
Right. And now we've added THC beverages, which I've also had an opportunity to make.
Do you remember when you could get a pitcher for $5 at Size Roost?
I brought that up. Do you remember when they used to run the reverse pitchers? So they started off at 5 and by 9 o'clock they were 3.
Oh my God. That's insane. I mean,
I know. I think about drinking with Lincoln. $5 all you can drink. I think about quarter draws, lumpies,
or any silver coin, any drink.
Yeah, penny pitchers.
Yeah, you pay $5 to get in. Here's your nickel. Give me a shitty whiskey and Coke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's insane. Like, just even thinking back. I mean, luckily around here you can still find a place that's doing like 2 3/4 tall boys or something. You know, like it's still around. But again, then you have to go in the afternoon. I'm not going to a bar around here in the afternoon. Like, it's probably not going to happen. I'd much rather sit on my patio and drink a beer in the afternoon.
I'm going to the United match later tonight, and so I can't remember what beer prices are at Allianz Field, so that'll be interesting.
I can only imagine. Like, that's always crazy to me. Like, or like when you go to a tourist destination. You know, when we were at Crater Lake, we're talking like an 8-ounce beer, $7.
Yeah,
like in a plastic cup. Like, you know, it's like what? I mean, it was delicious. Mainly because we've been traveling all day and we really wanted a beer, and it was by far the best beer. You know, you ever have that moment when this is the best beer I've ever had, and it's not, but because of the perfect storm of the situation, and you're just like, I will have 3 more of these, please. And then you're like $20 in and only 24 ounces in, and you're like, what just happened here?
Yeah, no, I remember one time in Northern California, I was vacationing. My ex-wife and I were vacationing with her folks, and we went out hiking, and her dad was just being whiny the entire time. And we finally got back into town and made sure that he got some wine and I got a beer. And I remember sitting there and I just savored that thing. And it was like, I have needed this for so long. I'm going to enjoy this.
Well, and that's another one of those situations too. Post-hike beer. Oh man, always so good.
People always ask me what my favorite beer is, and I'm like, beer is such a situational thing for me.
Yeah,
it's such a situational thing. Like there are some foods, man. I'll eat a roast beef sandwich any time of day. I don't care if it's 100 degrees or 50 degrees. I'm gonna eat a roast beef sandwich. There's a roast beef place in Bloomington, not too far from work, that I would do naughty things to that food. But like beer, like I'm not gonna drink a double chocolate stout after I mowed the lawn.
Yeah. You know what? Right? And when you mention a double chocolate stout, now I feel is the time for a public service announcement. If you're gonna make a fucking s'mores beer or like a maple beer, be fucking reasonable about it. Because if you're gonna throw all flavor, no beer, I'm gonna throw it up after I drink it. Sometimes less is more. Please stop doing that. I get my hopes up. I see like a s'mores beer, and all I'm looking for mostly is the graham cracker notes. Mm-hmm. And then I end up getting hit in the face with like what feels like a dump truck of marshmallow and overwhelming chocolate. Like not cocoa nibs, but like someone has force fed me chocolate by a ditch digging shovel. And I'm just like, I don't feel good.
Yeah, no, I agree. I still want my beer to taste like beer at the end of the day.
Yeah,
I'm drinking beer because I want beer. Right? It's like when I see someone that says they love coffee and then I watch them put 32 creams and 27 sugars in there.
Right.
And I'm like, you just like caffeine.
Right. I mean, sometimes a nice iced caramel something is good, but I mean, I agree. I still want there to be a coffee flavor there. And beer especially. I want it to be beer first with some nice subtle flavors there that make me go, you know what? This is new. I like this. This is new. And I like what they did here. Not, oh my God, it tastes like I licked a bottle of maple syrup from the inside. Like, not even, I want it to taste like I licked it from the outside. Like somebody's hands have just been a little sticky and left some maple syrup on there instead of doing the whole like scene from Super Troopers while I'm drinking my beer. For Christ's sake. So yeah, I would agree with that. So you get into distilling and you work there for how long?
Not even a year.
Okay. And matter of fact, as we were talking in March, you were like, yeah, I need to get out of the beverage industry entirely. Yeah. It's time for something new. And I've never been as happy for somebody as I was for you. And you're like, I had an interview with a company where I could potentially be doing art again. And I'm like, oh man, fucking good for you. Like, good for you. Like being able to recognize when you're like, hey, I'm done with this and I know what I want to do. And I want this opportunity. And then to get the opportunity and land the gig, man, I'm so happy for you.
No, I really appreciate that. Yeah.
I'm going to live vicariously through you for at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, man, it was time for a change. You know, this wasn't ever going to be a career I could see myself retiring in. Like physically, that job was very physically demanding.
Right.
And it wasn't good for my mental health and it was not good for my financial health. That is one of the things that,
I mean, you know, and being able to recognize that for yourself and have marketable skills that you can apply somewhere else. And I mean, there's a lot to be said about like regular paycheck coming from a place that's not going to go anywhere and insurance that, you know, that's going to be from a real insurance company, you know, stuff like that. It gives you a peace of mind that, I mean, I had that discussion with my therapist on Thursday and he was like, you do recognize what your job has afforded to you. Right. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm still there. I mean, money and health insurance, like the two most important things, you know, I mean, you have to have money and you really have to have health insurance unless you live in fucking Norway, which neither one of us do. I mean, you're the closest. The closest to Norway out of the two of us. Yeah. Oh, Lado, don't you know us up there? Oh, boot in the boot. But yeah. I mean, it's that's important, and a lot of people call it being trapped and stuff. But it's like, no. I mean, I also get to go on vacations and not worry about if I get a hotel room that I'll be able to buy groceries next month. You know, I mean, those are important things.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I realized eventually that I was trapped in the situation that I was because I couldn't afford the things that I needed. And there wasn't going to be an opportunity for growth.
Right.
The ceiling is very low and it came from a romantic idea. So many of these things, people, you know, when you start off as a hobby, there's so much romance and, you know, you're doing it for the passion and all of that. And you're doing it for integrity. And it's like, yeah, well, you know, I tried paying for my daughter's health insurance with passion. And they said, that's really great. We would like money.
I feel attacked. Yeah. So a lot of people will like, you know, you deal with a lot of unreasonable people in life. And, you know, I have people that have worked very hard for what they've gotten and they've been very fortunate that it's worked out for them and they're very successful. And, you know, they'll tell me on a regular basis, like, you're just giving up, man. You're just giving up. And I'm like, no, I'm not giving up. I'm growing up. I have to acknowledge that I probably, because of the way I've set myself up, have 5, maybe 6 years left in the career that I'm in. And then I can retire with a pension. I don't see that as giving up at this point. I see it as me going, look, dreams are fun, but I'm not going to become a professional podcaster.
Yeah.
You know, dreams are fun, but I'm not going to be a YouTube influencer. dreams are fun, but braces cost money. And so I think once you make a decision and go, hey, this is what I'm going to do because it affords me the ability to not be neurotic and freak out and wonder what's next, while still going, hey, maybe I'll find the love for this again. Maybe you end up making some beer in your garage because it's fun again. Maybe I keep doing this podcast because it continues to be fun because I don't have to worry about how do I pay my bills because I've only got 4 listeners, like stuff like that it's about, and that's not to say people who take risks are immature. It's just that you have to realize what your limits are and then take advantage of your strengths.
Yeah.
I mean, fuck, man, I am not marketable. I have no marketable skills. Believe me, I've been on LinkedIn and Monster and stuff for several years. And when jobs pop up that I would be interested in, and I look at them, I'm like, yeah, I don't have any of those qualifications. None of them, So it's like, and recruiters are not chasing me. So fuck you, Tim.
Well, I mean, I don't really get a whole lot of that, like I know I have kind of a diverse background, but I don't necessarily have, I often get envious of people. Before I got into brewing, I got really envious of people who knew what they wanted to do and were doing it.
Oh yeah, right? For sure. I'm still
because because the whole time before I got into brewing, I felt lost. It didn't feel like home.
Right.
The whole, where do you see yourself in 5 years, never applied to me until I was in brewing. Then I could answer that. I could see I could see myself somewhere in 5 years.
Right.
And so I always got really envious of that. And so, I never really kind of developed hardcore down into any one level. So I spent my time just learning a little bit of everything, doing a lot of these little things. So I don't know that I necessarily have any real tangible expertise in anything.
I bet your resume would read that you do, though. I mean, honestly.
I don't know. I mean, again, I didn't get this job because of my resume. I got this because a guy that I worked with at the sign company in Ames 22 years ago also happens to work there and put in a good word for me.
Do I know him? Minneapolis ain't that far away.
So
I'll commute.
Yeah, I know. So it's I mean, and that's not to say that I didn't get it on my own merits. I do have science experience and project management experience and all of that. But most recruiters would look at the last 10 years in brewing and immediately put that thing in the trash.
Yeah, except for I think if you write it the right way, it shows like how much like life. I mean, really, that's where your life experience really does build your resume. I just don't have any of that.
if we could stop getting HR to keep using these AI bots, then it'd be all about it.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, that's where a lot of them are getting weeded out right now.
Yeah, they're just looking for keywords. Yeah, I can see that. But, I mean, but ultimately, it's better to work at a smaller place that maybe doesn't use that anyway. I think. You know, do you really want to work for a B-Dubs or a Best Buy or some conglomerate, like something huge at this point in your life? Probably not.
Probably not. I really did like a lot of the perks that came along with that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. Could you imagine dropping into one of those jobs now at 46 years old and all these up and coming young people?
I could have seen myself going back and being project manager at something like a B-Dubs. I don't think I could handle Best Buy.
I think it'd be crazy. You'd walk in there and you'd be like, I don't remember everybody being this young when I was this young.
No, there is a level of that, but I work with young kids now. It just would look like it. It's changed. It's weird because like we were talking about loving college, and college is like the last time in your life where you're going to be around that many people that close to your age and that close of an area.
Right.
Once you get out into the working world, you're working with Janice, who's 68 and who's been there for 25 years, and Pete, who interned last summer and just got in. And so
I guess I never really thought of it that way. Like that. Yeah, you're right. That is the last time you're surrounded by your peers.
Yeah,
really. I mean, oh man, that's depressing. Seriously, fuck you, Tim.
Good.
Why do you ruin my life? Why am I your friend?
If I did one thing to make your light a little dimmer today, then I've done my job.
Well, I think you're the project manager of that for sure. I think you might even be the master of that. But no, man, I tell you, like, I'm so happy for you. I'm glad that you got the changes you needed, and I'm glad that you're enjoying life and enjoying time with your daughter, and that you're seeing a thing that you wanted to fruition, man. So I'm happy for you. I can't tell you how much like joy that brings to me, seeing you happy. And I really appreciate you coming here and talking about all of this again.
I mean, we actually sort of did it 1.5 times last time.
Yeah, we really did. I mean, there's so many things. That was just a very interesting weekend, and it was shitty reason, but so awesome. Like, it was just so many good things. So many good things have come from that weekend. Like us reconnecting being probably one of the biggest ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
So no, I really appreciate how supportive you've been of this, and that you're willing to come on and talk, and just like continued happiness for you, man. And I just like, it's important to me. Like, I love you, buddy. And it's important to me that you're happy.
That means the world to me. You've been probably a support in ways that I don't think you even knew.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've never eaten so much Cuban food, mainly because I'd never eaten Cuban food before. A Cuban restaurant in the Ramada. It was delicious. Those people were so nice too. The people that ran that restaurant.
Yeah, seriously.
But yeah, no, I needed it as well. I don't think I would have been able to get through that weekend I don't want to say easily, but like as comfortably as had you not been there. Like, having each other to lean on and like to keep each other sane was pretty awesome. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for being so supportive of this. And if that new company you work for needs a media management specialist or something,
that's good to know.
Somebody to edit their podcasts that they do about art. I don't know, whatever it takes, I mean, really, the garbage emptied for a similar pay, whatever. I mean, but yeah, seriously, man, like, thank you so much. And obviously we talk all the time, so I'll talk to you again soon. And like, truly, buddy, I love you.
Same.
Oh, man. Go to that soccer game.
All right.
Bye.
Tony Forsmark.
Hey, creepy people.
This is P&W Haunts and Homicides. I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Cassie.
Together, we explore stories of the paranormal and true crime throughout the Pacific Northwest. For each episode, we do a tarot reading to help us gain some insight on the topic as we share the facts of the case and our interpretations. You can find our episodes featuring true stories from infamous cases such as the misdeeds of Boeing, as well as lesser-known true crime cases like the murders in Tunnel 13.
As well as our spooky stories from Pike Place and Raven's Manor on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you'd like to listen. Have a creepy ass day.